Okay, hello. How's everybody doing tonight? It is Monday, January 18th, 2021, and I wanted to say that I'm starting a YouTube channel called The Daily Discussion. And today on The Daily Discussion, we will be discussing the Biden transition to power. So, we all know that here in 2 days, or here, since it's 11:30, I guess, we can see that we can almost call it a day. On January 20th, Joe Biden will be inaugurated the next president of the United States. So, I figured it would only be good. I will cover the inauguration here on this channel. So I figured let's look at what Biden and a Biden-Harris administration would look like for the United States. First, let's look. The Biden plan for combating COVID-19. He just unveiled this big $1.9 trillion spending bill. Okay, a decisive public health response that ensures the wide. Okay, I see free testing, cost barriers to preventative care for the COVID-19 treatment, the development of a vaccine. So that's already developed. There, Biden might want to change his website there. Economic response that starts with emergency paid leave. Okay. So that is his plan calls the Biden plan. Let's look. Restoring trust, credibility, and a common purpose. So let's look what was in that $1.9 trillion bill. 1.9. Okay, this is what was, let's check this out. What was in that COVID relief bill? Let's check it out. Okay. Over $1 trillion to assist families needing direct financial support. $440 billion in emergency funds for cash poor small businesses and communities. Imagine that's probably the PPP loan. Okay. So now it looks like instead of the $600 that we got under the Trump administration, that he was calling for $2,000, Mr. Biden will distribute $1,400 stimulus checks to even it out to $2,000 for every household. Okay. Next, we have $25 billion in emergency funding for emergency paid sick, family medical leave, and stabilized child care centers. The vaccine rollout, he says the vaccine rollout in the United States has been a failure so far. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Biden, but somebody needs to tell him that the reason that the vaccine rollout has been a failure is because he needs to look at Democratic governors. For example, in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo. He says that Trump gave the vaccines to the states and he said distribute them how the states see fit. Florida is you drive up in a car and you wait in line and you'll get your vaccine. And as DeSantis said, he's not taking his vaccine until his time comes. Well, New York, on the other hand, here, I'll pull it up, you can see. Let's see if we can get his okay. Wants New York to buy COVID vaccine directly from Pfizer. So now, instead of getting it from the federal government, he's trying to make this a political game to see if he can just buy it directly from Pfizer and go around Donald Trump. Which, did we really not expect this from Andrew Cuomo? The guy who supposedly needed
You want to make every game interesting? Step one.
Supposedly needed all these ventilators, needed this massive ship brought in called the USS, I'm trying to think. What was that ship called? The USS Comfort is what that was called. He needs the USS Comfort brought in. Well, I'm sorry, but Cuomo in New York handling COVID has been an absolute failure. It really has. And I'm sorry to say it, but he needs to do better. And I'm checking the name of this ship. USS Comfort arrives in New York's Bay. So, looks like there's nothing really popping up here, just a video. Right here, urge the federal government to increase the supply of COVID-19 vaccines. Buy doses directly to increase the state's supply. Well, supposedly, he had a whole bunch of vaccines already that he wasn't distributing. So, I'm sorry, but Biden's going to have to do something with his Democratic governors that need to release the vaccine. I mean, they've held it for political purposes against Trump because he on his own time, manufactures with Operation Warp Speed a vaccine in record time that no one thought was possible. And now he has it out there for the Democratic governors and the states. And now it's a record failure because he can't get the vaccine out. Well, the federal government, really, Trump is not a federal government overreach type of person. So, he's not going to release federal guidelines like Joseph Biden is. So, that's the COVID vaccine. He has produced legislation that would also initiate his push for a $15 minimum wage. The $15 minimum wage. Where do we start with the $15 minimum wage? Well, I believe we have to start with right here. In my opinion, he wants the new stimulus package, $15 minimum wage. My biggest thing with a $15 minimum wage is you look at McDonald's, for example. If you're paying somebody $15 an hour, or small businesses, so you're like small businesses around town, like not your big corporate stores, if they have to pay an employer $15 or an employee $15 an hour, they have to get that money from somewhere. Everybody has to get that money from somewhere. So now you're increasing the federal minimum wage is, I believe it is $7.50 to $15. And you can't just do that and not expect prices and inflation to rise. So now, say I own a vehicle company. If I own a vehicle company and the federal government tells me you have to pay every single employer at least $15, or McDonald's, for example, you have to pay every employer $15. Well, now the CEO of McDonald's looks and says, I'm going to start losing money. So how can I get that money back? He looks and he says, well, I'll raise the prices of every single item on my menu to where it balances out. So now, all that Biden is doing in the process of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is causing a huge cause of inflation. And really, I think it will balance out to how it is now or even worse, which is companies. You'll see a lot of small businesses go under because they can't compete. They just can't compete with big corporate companies like your Walmarts. Like your little stores can't compete with Walmart. They can't beat out the prices. You'll see Amazon, a big online shopping take off because they won't have to pay in-store employees by the hour. You'll see McDonald's, I believe, how they're putting in kiosk like Sheets. If you all been to a Sheets, they have those order MTO. You'll probably see a lot of those to cut down on people that, like cashiers. And my biggest thing is restaurants. Not only did this whole pandemic crack down on restaurants the whole time, but now as soon as they're opening up, barely able to stay open, which as well as Biden said he wants to roll out an 100-day mask mandate, which could possibly also mean an 100-day shutdown. And for the businesses that already barely made it through the shutdown the first time, and everybody said, we shut down so good, this should never, we can open back up and we can start going back to normal. And then now it is January 2021 and we are still fully in COVID, and it is a big issue of the new incoming administration. So now you're going to tell them that are barely struggling, eat local businesses. Like I know in my town we have local diners and local eateries that are just run by local people and not many chains. Well, I know a lot of them barely made it through the shutdown the first time, and for them to try and make it through shutdown the second time, they're really at ends meet, and they're barely making it, and now, as soon as they reopen, they have to pay every single worker $15 an hour. So I just think inflation will go up. Next on the Biden agenda, we have Biden's cabinet picks. Let's look at his cabinet picks so far. Let's see what that's up to. Okay. We have confirmations and no confirmations. Kamala Harris, of course. I mean, that's known. But let's look at who he has here. We have these. Also, I think everybody's worrying about Trump's impeachment in the Senate, which they can't reasonably impeach him by the time he leaves office. And I think all this is doing is delaying, as you see here, confirming Biden's cabinet picks. And that's a big issue for the incoming administration. Honestly, I think the whole impeachment is a coup to deny Trump a chance to run again in 2024. But let's look here. We got a thing that immediately brings off to me that speaks volumes, I think, of this administration is the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. And I bring this to your attention because he ran for president and was primaried out of the Democratic race. Primarily because he didn't have the experience to be president. So he drops out of the race and endorses Biden. Well, now he has a spot on the Secretary of Transportation. My question is why would you put the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, who has had no dealings with the federal government, really? I mean, he's never even held a state Senate seat, let alone not a U.S. Senate seat, or he's not even a congressman. Why would you appoint him to the Secretary of Transportation? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. We have, and also another thing that speaks volumes to me is you can see here throughout his list is a lot of these people are former members of Obama's administration. Right there, Merrick Garland. He was a federal judge about ready to go. He was nominated for the Supreme Court under Obama that got denied. He's the Attorney General. Okay, who else do we have? Ron Klain, Jake Sullivan, John Kerry. John Kerry, he was appointed. He ran for president. I think he's special presidential envoy for climate change. I believe climate change is going to be a big issue on this administration, and it worries me. It really does. Because my biggest issue is how far is Biden willing to step into as we know, the Green New Deal. And what the Green New Deal, of what I know of, entitles is cutting down on carbon emissions, and it's really going to crack down on your big factories. And I was also reading into it, is it wants to try to go like cut down on gas powered cars by the year of 2035. So just for the sake, let's look at the Green New Deal, which this is a very real possibility considering the fact that Harris sponsored the Green New Deal bill. Let's look. What is the Green New Deal and how would it work? Off of NBC. Carbon emissions. The Green New Deal is not a specific policy proposal, but rather a general set of goals. That's what I mean. Net zero emissions by the year of 2050, ideally even sooner in the United States. It goes beyond the environment and calls for universal. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. This is what you get with today's Democratic Party. We can't make a bill just about climate. We have to make a bill about it. It's climate, but it will also have, as it's in there, universal health care and affordable housing. What in the world does universal health care have to do with carbon emissions? And this is exactly what they did with the COVID-19 stimulus. They shoved millions of dollars in the bills to go to things that had nothing to do with COVID. For example, in this last $600 round of stimulus checks that Trump did not want to sign, but did for money for the American people, it gave, I believe, $1.3 million to a gender program in Ukraine. How in the world? Number one, we're just signing bills worth trillions of dollars. And number two, why would we not put that money somewhere in the United States to help more people, instead of sending it to a gender program in Ukraine? Okay. Not all Democratic presidential candidates back the Green New Deal. I don't think. Okay, right here. See? Bernie Sanders supports the Green New Deal, of course. I'm okay. Dry mouth. Dry throat from talking. Elizabeth Warren, she supports the Green New Deal. Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg. Andrew Yang. Donald Trump strongly opposes. And I hope also right there under Donald Trump, I'll highlight it, the Paris Climate Accord or Agreement. Biden also said he's going to put us back in the Paris Climate Accord in an executive order. This is the Paris Climate Accord while I'm searching it for you guys to read. Pretty much the Paris Climate Accord is, it's European countries and us coming together to try and find out how we can cut down on carbon emissions. But there's a big countries that are in that aren't pulling their fair weight, such as China and India, who are some of the biggest carbon emission producers in the world. And honestly, why in the world are we spending money? We should be more worried about, we have carbon emissions. Everybody's going to have carbon emissions. You're not just going to completely tomorrow sign a bill without putting millions of people out of work and just make carbon emissions go away. It's not going to happen. And this Paris Climate Accord is just us throwing millions at a club, pretty much, that wants to try and do that. Right here. I really think the Paris Climate Accord is definitely not a thing we should be in, because China's not in it, and that's the whole reason we pulled out of it. It is Convention on Climate Change and Dealing with Greenhouse Gas Emissions or Carbon Emissions. Let's look at countries. I guarantee you China will not be a country. Countries. I'm Googling all this for you guys so you can see that I kind of know what I'm talking about. Countries. I guarantee you, I do not believe that China and India are in lists of parties. Let's look. Here we go, Wikipedia, which Wikipedia isn't the most valid of sources, but I think we can go off of it. Let's see. Let's go under C. China. Ooh, China is in it. But look, China is in it, but let's look. Nope, never mind. It looks like they withdrawed in 2016. Date of entry into force, date of approval. So they were forced into it, but then I believe they left. And look, every other country, let's look at China. We are at 20.09% of carbon emissions. Let's go down to here to India, 4.10 is percent. Now let's look at the United States versus China. There's United. Yeah, we pulled out of it. But let's look at what our carbon emissions are. Carbon emissions for the U.S. Let's try and find this out, shall we? Carbon emissions. Fell 10% in 2020 because of the pandemic. CNN. Communist News Network. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding, guys. The 2009 economic recession caused a drop in... But I can't find a number. You see this? They won't put out a number.
You ready for tonight?
I've been training 3 years.
They won't put out a number because... I don't know why. They say it's lower, but we won't give out a number. Because, you know why we won't get out a number? Because we're CNN, and we hate Trump, and anything that we can do to hurt Trump, we will do, because we don't like Trump. So, Biden wants to join the Paris Climate Accord. Next. And this was what really scares me. Read. Illegal immigration caravans back on the way. And Joe Biden invited them. I wouldn't really say he invited them, but he's definitely leaving the door open for them to come in. A border crisis is brewing before President-elect Joe Biden. We look at how tough Donald Trump handled the border. Whether you like what he did or not, illegal immigration and border security dropped tremendously in the last 4 years, part of which because he built the wall. What he ran on in 2016. Biden said, "In my administration, we will not build another foot of the wall." So, Biden, how do you plan on keeping these migrant caravans out of the United States that are forming in Honduras? I mean, look, these people are forming like thousands of people in caravans. And Biden doesn't have a plan for them. Biden will set up an advisory to tell him how he thinks he should handle this. But if you ask Biden right now, he probably won't have an answer. He'll get back to you on that. That's the thing, I believe, with this administration coming in. And that's what I think they said they'll do. They'll take everything good that Trump did, and they'll erase it. They'll make it a disaster. And then a while after, everyone will forget about what Trump did. And then someone will fix it long across the way. But the problem is we don't know how long that will be. So that could be years. That's at least going to be terms. So 4-year increments. It's not going to be good, folks. I really don't think. I think a Biden administration is going to be very rough on America. I really do. Biden immigration plan, 8-year path to citizenship will be unveiled on day 1. Kicking off migrant caravans once again. The legislation puts Biden on track to deliver a major campaign promise important to Latino voters. After 4 years of President Trump's restrictive policies, well, Mr. Biden, let's look. They said apparently that Trump wants to be so rough right here that President Donald Trump's restrictive policies for Latino voters. Let's look. Trump cultivated the Latino voters. Hispanic vote helps Trump win Florida. All I have to say is, Biden, you called Trump xenophobic when he shut down the Chinese border for COVID-19. Everybody called him xenophobic. He was big racist. He was xenophobic and racist, and they called him names, and surprisingly, he saved hundreds of thousands of lives. You called Trump's border policies terrible. Just, would they have to be changed? Well, Biden, if they have to be changed, why are Latinos voting for Trump? Why did they like Trump more than you when Trump's policies supposedly cracked down on Latinos? I'll tell you why. Because it didn't. Because what Trump did, he helped legal immigrants. He helped legal immigrants get into the country, and he stopped illegal immigration. Next. Let's look at else. We got the minimum wage. Let's look at some executive orders. Biden would take additional action in, internet. Gotta love it. Okay, let's look. The next day, Biden would sign orders in the COVID-19 outbreak, which would see action in providing economic relief to those suffering, including a directive to speed the reuniting of families separated at the U.S.-Mexico border under Trump's policies. Honestly, I'm going to say this, and I may get a lot of flack for this, but I'm going to say it anyways. The Democrats ran more this year, and Biden ran and generalized his base on, we hate Trump more than we need to fix America. Because really, if you look, in the words of a wrestler, which I can't think of his name right now, or a football player, in the words of a sports person, before the COVID-19 pandemic, Donald Trump is still our head coach until the 20th. He was winning us Super Bowls before the pandemic. And he led us through the pandemic, through a tough season. So why in the world did we fire a coach that was winning us Super Bowls? It just doesn't make sense. Nothing here makes sense. As well as, I would just like to point out, and this just popped up, that supposedly, and I just got this alert just now off the ABC News, Biden's inauguration. They were setting up supposedly flags to represent people, or to represent like people that couldn't attend because of COVID, or people that died because of COVID. I'll tell you here in a minute. I can't find it. Maybe ABC took it down. We'll be ready. Yeah, they're calling all. I'm gonna be honest. There's gonna be more National Guard down there than people actually there supporting Biden on his inauguration. But I do believe, right there, Joe Biden will stress unity at inauguration. The Russian investigation. All this crazy stuff that they did to Trump. The Russian investigation that was, Robert Mueller concluded there was no collusion. There was no collusion, but we still had to push it for 4 years. And now magically there might have been evidence of voter fraud, and there was widespread evidence of voter fraud with no investigation. Why was there no investigation? I'll tell you why. I'll let you all find it out. Let's find it here. See that? That's why. A member of the Democratic Party. Let's not forget Hunter Biden, too, but that's a story. That's a topic for a different episode. If I covered everything right now, we wouldn't have a second episode now, would we? So, I think I mostly covered everything. Also, I did not cover that Joe Biden will have a dog in the White House. I know that's a small detail, but he'll have a dog in the White House. 2 of them. Which, let me remind you, one of them broke his foot. He was walking a minute, broke his foot. But back to that thing that I was saying earlier is I guess the ABC reported, you guys can look it up, that they were putting flags, and it kind of did look like people for a flyover, like you could see the lines and stuff. It did resemble like people for Biden's inauguration, and I think that's because, and I really do, they commit this grand scheme that we're going to have voter fraud, which they did find. They did get a lot of ballots. Election day turned into election days and weeks and months like Trump, or days and weeks like Trump did say. But I think it's because that Trump and here, let's just compare. Let's look at Obama's inauguration. Let's look. Look at all the people. And look, I don't like Obama. I didn't think he was a good president, but look at all the people there. Now, look at Trump's inauguration. Look at all the people there. Look. Now let me remind you again now, right there. That's the picture that I was trying to get for, right here. This is the picture that I was trying to get for Obama. But supposedly that in there it's all filled with flags and stuff. Now, let me remind you that Barack Obama got, or not Barack Obama, yes, he got 64 million votes. Trump, I believe, got like 70 million votes, and this year he got like 74 million votes. Joe Biden got 80 million votes. The most out of any sitting president in history. So now is his chance to really prove if there was no voter fraud. I get it's COVID, but still. They had no problem coming out to celebrate after the election was over in big cities. This should be like massive. And you know why they're filling it all in, and I'll leave you guys with this to think about. You know why they're filling it all in? Because they're scared that if these 2 blocks only get filled and no one else there, people are going to think to themselves, did we really just get shammed out of an election? And that's what I think people are going to think. But anyways, thank you all for the opening of my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. And go subscribe to the channel, The Daily Discussion, where we post and discuss big political every day. What you need to know. Everybody, have a good night. Stay safe. And God bless America.